When we look inward, you're bombarded with thoughts, feelings, and you can't pay attention. They're all like kind of just smashed in there, and it's like, oh, this is annoying, I can't do this. Or they're just paying attention to thoughts and they're reliving memories and emotions and stuff. So, a really simple method on how you can bring your awareness and pay attention to these different components is bring your awareness outside of the body. So, when we talk about expanded states of consciousness, it means it's expanded. It's literally expanding. Like there's a feeling to it where it's expanding. So first expansion is between your hands, right? It's a very small space. You bring all your awareness and attention there. It's easy to quieten your mind, right? Then you're able to observe the phenomena that happens, which is the electromagnetic energy that's between your hands, right? So because there's nothing else you've experienced outside your body before, straight away the consciousness like, oh, there's energy. Because consciousness wants to latch onto something. So it pays attention to energy, what's already there. So there's an astral feeling of it, right? Your relationship to that injury. There's the injury itself, and then there's the consciousness around the injury. So when you're able to separate these three aspects, now healing becomes a lot easier. So water is a very strong conductor for energy, right? So this is why, like when you feel energy, you're feeling it through the fascial web. So now you can, because you have conscious awareness of energy and you're able to direct energy according to your will, now you can move that energy through the body and feel the different aspects of your body you haven't felt before. So the more resistance you have, the more muscle tension you have, right? So when you release the muscle tension and you transform it into a fascial tension, now the energy passes through. You can only influence what you can feel. If you can't feel it, you can't influence it.
Hello, curious minds and beautiful souls, and welcome back to another episode of Awake and Aware podcast. Today, Tammy and I are introducing a very special guest and a dear friend of mine, Dinesh Kumar. And Dinesh brings such a wealth of information, and not just information, but practical application into everyday's life through practices that he does, that he teaches, and his ability to break down the complex concepts into exercises that are tangible, that are doable, and the fact that you can learn to feel and perceive energy within a few minutes. The first time I met Dinesh, this was like the most notable thing about him was that he was able to bridge this seeming gap between the theoretical knowledge of someone and the ability to physically practice something that seems metaphysical and put it into actual practice in the physicality in our life. Without any further ado, let me welcome back Tammy and Dinesh Kumar. Welcome again to Awaken Aware podcast. Today I have a privilege and honor to again have myself joined by Tammy Klaproth and Dinesh Kumar. Thank you guys for joining again. I want us to take a moment and just introduce Dinesh briefly. I met Dinesh 2022
I think
November,
it's 3 years.
almost 3 years, yeah.
Yeah.
So I met Dinesh and Parry, his wife, on a training with Mark Rasmus. And one of the things that has immediately spoke to me was his ability to focus and just be present, and this immense ability to be still for hours and hours on as we were doing the workshop. And he's just sitting there in meditation. And I was just, wow, this guy can sit still. And I was just impressed. And the first time, I was like, wow, what is happening here? This is pretty cool. And later on, I've learned that, we were obviously practicing a state of being, state of mind. But I didn't know that time at the first time. And it was just impressive. Just watch you uh, just be there and not mind kind of thing, or just being in your own world kind of thing in a sense. But I know there is a lot more behind that, what you were doing and where you were, and we'll get to that as well. In the meantime, would you mind and just introducing yourself a little bit? I know you have a little bit of background in PT and physical coaching, so if you don't mind giving us a little bit of a background about you.
So, hello everyone. Nothing much to my background really. I've done martial arts for a long period of time, like about over a decade, and I was a myotherapist for about 8 years. And I've always been interested in like spiritual development and what's beyond this material world. And that got me into a lot of different things, a lot of different systems. But the frustration that I felt was it was mainly philosophical,
Mm.
dogmatic, and doctrine based. And it was a lot of theories of what is they're describing, or what these different aspects of reality is. And it requires a lot of faith in a lot of these esoteric or religious traditions. And I gave it a go, and it was just philosophy. It was just information that you put in your head, and which actually is detrimental down the track when you know what to do. So the less information you have, the easier the path is. So essentially, yeah,
Mhm.
that's just a bit about me. And so when I came across see for Mark Rasmus on a YouTube video, and I'm like, oh, this guy knows it. He's living it. He's not just talking about it. And the one thing that I really resonated with me was his principle-based approach to teaching, and it was not focused on what he can do at all. It was focused on the principles and the process on how people can develop themselves. So he was very authentic in terms of the way he teaches. He really wants people to get it. That's what really resonated with me. And then I started his online course, and the first time I felt energy, I'm like, oh, okay, this is what I've been looking for.
Mm.
And from there, the intuitive guiding system kind of like prepared me, okay, go see this guy, start learning. And then it was a whole journey from there, and it's still going.
Beautiful, beautiful. I love
Mm.
the aspect that you just mentioned because a lot of theories out there already, and very few people actually know the practices that actually work, like you said.
Mhm.
And the energy relating specifically, I mean, a lot of people are also, I would say, talented that sense the energy and are able to be clairvoyant and all that, to just feel the energy. But a lot of people are really fairly mechanical in their life, in their being, and they really want to learn stuff
Mhm.
like this. And I feel like for that, what Sifu Mark Rasmus teaches and what you teach these days also is just incredible. The quality of that transmission that you guys do is really, really high. And that's why one of the reasons I wanted to have you here is because life comes down really to, I would say, in some sense, to two things, maybe more, of course, but awareness. If you have awareness about something that is missing or is too much of your in your life, you can change it, right? And then second, practice, actual
Yeah.
physical practice, actual doing.
Yeah.
So thank you for touching on that.
And I'm new to you, and I've been watching all of your content and reading and just immersing myself in it. And I'm very, very interested. And I love what you're talking about. And I don't know if this aligns or not, but I'm in a place in my life where there doesn't need to be more knowledge to expand into where I'm being called to next. It's not buy another book, find another teacher here, having the experience of things. And the
Mhm.
more that I lean into that, the more that I feel my energy and the energy of others, and it's shifting. So it sounds like a lot of what you're talking about sounds like what I've been experiencing within my life. So it feels
Mm.
familiar, but new
Yeah.
at the same time.
Mm.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful.
Mhm.
Tammy and I just did a few podcast sessions on the mental, astral, and the physical body, kind of how they relate. And you were talking about in your videos that you have created that I have taken now probably third time around, is that there is a synchronizing and then there is a balancing basically that happens within these three levels of being that we have, right? The layers. So would you mind talking to that a little bit and kind
Yeah.
of explain the mental, the astral, and physical difference and synchronization of those three body layers?
So essentially, for someone to understand, and whenever I say understand, it's understanding through experience.
Yeah.
So it's not an intellectual understanding. It's you come to an understanding through experience. So you hear it everywhere: mind, body, spirit, emotions, mind. But what are all these different components? So we have to have a look at this from a practice of getting to a point of understanding what consciousness is,
Mhm.
right? So when you understand what consciousness is and how everything is attached to consciousness, then you're able to discern these different layers. And this discernment happens through feeling. right? And feeling can't be put into words clearly. So every time you have a conscious experience of something, the consciousness paying attention to an experience, as soon as you have an experience of something, it brings it down a level. And then when you articulate that information through words, it brings it down another level. And each level you come down, you're losing information. So,
Okay.
and eventually, like it's not the essence of what you actually experienced or what it is that you're paying attention to. So, an analogy that I like to use here is analog and digital. So, if you look at an analog, it's like a sine wave, right? There's infinite amount of information there, but we can't comprehend that. So, they create a digital format where they break down the information so it is comprehensible for us. So, we do the same thing in our lived experience. So when we have a feeling, we want to put a word to it and put a label to it, and that puts it into a box where we can describe it and talk about it, and we'll bring it into the physical level, right? So what we need to do is we have to be able to discern, okay, what is consciousness, what is energy, and what is information? We have to be able to pull these things apart. And the way we do that is it's actually a really easy process. But when you look at all these different systems, so for example, esoteric systems, they talk about you have to go inward, right? But if you look at it from a scientific approach, they're like, oh, we have to observe the external reality, the objective reality. And they're looking for things in brains, where is the consciousness, or they're looking like breaking down particles up until like, you know, like, oh, there's nothing there. So when we look inward, you're bombarded with thoughts, feelings, and you can't pay attention. They're all like kind of just smashed in there, and it's like, oh, this is annoying, I can't do this. Or they're just paying attention to thoughts and they're reliving memories and emotions and stuff. So a really simple method on how you can bring your awareness and pay attention to these different components is bring your awareness outside of the body, right? When you
Okay.
bring your awareness outside of the body, and this is why we teach the people building the ball exercise. So when we talk about expanded states of consciousness, it means it's expanded. It's literally expanding. Like there's a feeling to it where it's expanding. So first expansion is between your hands, right? It's a very small space. You bring all your awareness and attention there. It's easy to quieten your mind, right? Then you're able to observe the phenomena that happens, which is the electromagnetic energy that's between your hands, right? So because there's nothing else you've experienced outside your body before, straight away the consciousness like, oh, there's energy, because consciousness wants to latch onto something. So it pays attention to energy, what's already there, right? So from there, you're able to go, oh, my awareness is there, the energy is there. Now we have to pay attention to the information that's there, which is basically electromagnetic energy. And then from there, when you keep paying attention, all these principles start to reveal themselves when you're able to maintain a separation between these three things. So when we say mind, emotion, and body, or mind, astral, and body, so different systems have different labels to these things. So from the Hermetic or Western esoteric system, they say astral body, which is basically our ego identity. It's a collection of the choices and experiences that we've had in life that has an energetic substance, and which they refer to as a soul. And this is what makes up who you are. So people mostly identify with this energetic substance, with this energetic substance, which reflects into the physical aspect, which is a more dense aspect of the energetic substance, right? And then there's the consciousness, which sits above that, right? When you pull these things apart, then you start to see the causation chain on how your identity was formed. We come into this world as a baby. Well, like if you look at a baby, it's got like a curiosity and inquisitiveness of like, where am I? Right? And it's trying to take in all this information and trying to register what's going on. So, but it's just pure awareness, right? And then it starts to recognize patterns over time. It's like, oh, that's my mom, that's my dad. And it starts to like, form an identity based on the observation that it latches onto. And then from there, over a period of time, it attaches to likes and dislikes and blah, blah, blah. And over several years, like there's an identity formed, right? So essentially, identity is something that we collect. It's not who we are, right? So we need to be able to transcend the identity. And this is where when you move your awareness outside of the body, you're able to see what consciousness is, or what consciousness wants to latch onto. It wants to latch onto energy, right? So from there, you reflect back in, go, what's the energetic substance that makes up who I am, from the physical astral, or just identity, ego, soul, whatever you want to call it, just labels, and then the mind substance itself. When you're able to separate these three things, you're able to develop these three things individually and then synchronize it to a certain alignment. And it's this alignment that we're looking for, which makes life easy. Most people are living misaligned, including myself before, because there's aspirations that you want in life, but there's information that's contradicting that aspiration that you want to go through, whether because of the lived experience of like being a certain ethnicity or a gender or whatever, or all of these sort of things. There's certain information that contradicting what you want to be or who you want to become and what you want to achieve, right? So there's a constant struggle. So we want to look at like, oh, what's getting in the way, be able to have the discernment and introspective analysis, like, these are all the information that's stopping me from achieving certain things. You remove that. This is the alchemical process of being able to transform energy from one state to another, right? So when you're able to do all of these sort of things, you get that synchronicity. And it's actually a very simple process. I was able to do it, so anyone can do it. I wasn't a born psychic or anything like that. It's a trained ability. The only requirement is a keenness to learn. That's all. That's all one needs. And from there, it's a simple mechanical process on how someone can develop themselves physically, astrally, mentally, and spiritually.
Beautiful. Thanks for that. That was very intense. So, no, I like that because you're pointing towards the fact that it's important to understand first the separation of these three bodies and understand kind of like how your thought process feels. Like what does that feel like to be in your mind? And then what does it feel like to be in your heart space, when you're in that emotional state or feeling stuff? And then how does it feel to be in your physical body? I mean, we mostly have that experience already, but most people don't actually pay attention to how they are in their body. I feel that the ability to first discern each one of them separately, then like you say, leads to being able to align them, and that will move us to the next state of being.
Again, it sounds familiar to me. It's like I'm holding myself back from, oh, is this what I was doing then? Like I feel like it's present. It has presence within me. And it's one of those things like that I've been aware of it.
Yeah.
So it just feels very familiar. And it's like a next level of like we talk about, okay, be love, be your heart, lead, let your heart lead, go out into the world and, accept and come into awareness of patterns and things. And we talk about stories and all of that, which yes, of course. But this, to your point, is like another level of that. It's actually literally clearing it. It's not just changing a story or a pattern saying, oh, I have this pattern, I do ...
Yeah.
It's actually, it's like it's moving it out of the way.
Yeah. Again, like what you're saying, something that has been perhaps familiar. When
Yeah.
you're beginning to realize that you have thoughts, beginning to be aware again, speak into awareness, have some sort of action to be taken versus just like think about it and let it linger or whatnot. And with that, so then I wanted to ask you, because one of the things that obviously we've practiced in the training as well, that I feel would be very important to understand for really anyone out there is what you refer to as the alchemical substance or song or release. So this, just to say real briefly before we go into that, is that the release, the relaxation that you can feel simply from like if you have tension in your hand and you release it, that's the release idea, basically. So I was wondering if you can speak a little bit more to what you understand under this, obviously, alchemical substance as you describe it in your videos and or song, and then how that's actually helpful in everyday life.
Okay, so we'll just backtrack a little bit.
Yeah.
So in terms of what you were saying before, we pay attention to thoughts and what feelings and stuff like. So this is where most people get stuck. So what we want to do is ignore the thoughts that they don't matter, ignore the feelings that don't matter. Just bring your awareness to a state of stillness, right? So that's what we want to get to. And when you bring your awareness outside of your body and concentrate it between your hands, you feel energy, right? Like I've taught this to a lot of people now, and 95% of the people can feel it and straight away work with it, right? The only times where I feel like people didn't get it is usually some sort of trauma or drug abuse where they've dulled their sensitivity and they haven't developed the concentration to maintain their awareness or their consciousness there. It keeps fluxing in and out, and they go. So we need a level of concentration, and so to be able to do that. So once you're able to do that, then you're able to understand what these different layers are through experience. Otherwise, we all know like our thoughts is in the mind, feelings is in the heart space or the astral body, and movements and stuff. So the alchemical substance or the release aspect makes this a lot easier. So we have how would you say, a preconceived idea that consciousness is in the body, right? And now science is making breakthroughs. Like a lot of scientists have come through understanding that, consciousness is actually fundamental and it actually functions in the field. And they're starting to bring a level of evidence. It's not enough, but a level of evidence to it from the theoretical perspective. And what I've noticed was most of these scientists had an experience. And most of these scientists, it's because they had the experience, they're like, the way we've been looking at this is completely wrong. And they're reaffirming what all the ancient, like, Hermetics, Buddhism, Vedic systems, they're all still talking about the same thing. And the reason why I'm saying this is we need to first break that first barrier that limits us to pay attention to the nature of reality and nature of consciousness, which is the consciousness is not stuck to the body and it's not a product of the brain. It's more the brain is more of a channel for consciousness, right? Once you understand that, then you're able to easily bring your awareness outside of your body. Then you'll see, my consciousness can spread outside my body. It can function outside of my body. So this is where metaphysical things become possible, because once you experience that aspect. So now this is where the alchemical substance or release comes in. So because we have a contraction to the consciousness or the mind substance being stuck to the body or the brain, so through thought process, feelings, and actions, when you make your body hold very tense, like just the example that you showed, you'll feel the mind contracting to the body even more, because the survival mechanism starts to kick in when your body's in a tense state, and the mind contracts to I'll talk about the matrices, which the three bodies, they're held by a electromagnetic fluid, which pulls it all together to survive. That's contraction. And then when you suddenly release, you want to pay attention and move your awareness outside of your body, you'll feel this wave of energy leaving your body. Right? This allows you to expand your consciousness a lot easier, right? So when you do that between your hands, then you're able to feel like this, you're playing with two magnets. It's like, this electromagnetic energy becomes present. And then now you know what to pay attention to. That becomes your meditation object, and you start concentrating on that. So first, when you get to that aspect, and then you feel energy in your field, right? Now you get to have the ability to, and this is where when you increase awareness and concentration, you're able to understand the information that the energy is contained. And then you're able to understand better about what you are from, like, what's the information in my body? What's the energetic substance in my body, in my astral identity, and in my thoughts? And it's a lot easier to discern these patterns when you look at it from outside. When you look at it from inside, you get caught. Because you're in interaction. When you look at it from outside, now you're able to master the observing mind a lot easier. It's very hard to observe when you're in your thoughts, because the thoughts grab your attention and then it goes into a story and like all sorts of stuff's happening. Like, I was supposed to concentrate. If you move your awareness outside, then you're able to look from the outside and pay attention to the thought patterns you have, the emotional patterns you have, and the physical patterns you have. Right? And this is where the alchemical substances or the Sung concept, which is basically a relaxation. It's a releasing quality, which is the word has a certain meaning, but the feeling has a different quality to it. Right? This is where I talk about whenever we will label something, we're confining it to something like a language. Right? And like Sung probably means something different in that culture when you say Sung and release. When you translate it, it says release, but it probably means something else. This is where we have to, the labeling process and the words, they're more of a scaffold. They're more of a scaffold for us to understand and comprehend intellectually, where the intellect is synchronizing with the intuitive experience. So there's no contradiction. But then eventually you want to let go of that scaffolding, right? And it comes to form and formlessness. But going back to release concept, because you're able to understand that the mind can expand out through the process of release, then we're able to release the same thing, that energy stuck in us. So in a practical application, once you understand the mechanics of how this works, say, for example, we're having a conversation and we have an argument, right? There's a tension that starts to build between us. I'm like, I want to de-escalate this. So one, I have to get myself in a state of release, and then I can put you in a state of release where the energy doesn't stick, right? Because it doesn't stick, like it just fizzles away, and then you come back into a natural state, which is essentially what the alchemical substance does, release quality does. It brings you into a natural state of alignment, and things become very easy. But we have a nature to fight because we feel this separation, like, oh, this is me, that is you. But we share the same consciousness in a sense. We have an individual aspect where we've captured it, but the consciousness functions in the field. So when you start to release all these different aspects, this is where the spiritual process starts to take place. You release your body identity, you release the identity of the astral self, and then you understand pure awareness, and then you keep going up. You start to realize everything that's stuck to your consciousness. And when you start to release all these things that stuck to your consciousness, you're able to understand the nature of consciousness and the nature of reality much better. And that's the ascension and spiritual process. But then you can reverse that polarity and it's like, oh, how do I make my life here better? There's a spiritual ascension, I understand, but how do I make my life here better? It's the same process, but instead of releasing outward and upward, you bring it down into gravity, right? Because gravity is what holds our consciousness in our body and what holds our identity in our body. So when you start to release and relax a certain idea from the universal field of consciousness, now you're able to, this is the manifesting thing people talk about. Now you're able to come into resonance with the objective that you have in life, right? And this could be a simple thing of like, I want to get this task done efficiently. Say, for example, you have a meeting or you have some sort of, I don't know, work that you have to do. It's like, if you're not aligned, it's going to be, you're fighting and it's not going to be a pleasant experience. So from a practical perspective, how do I come into a synchronicity and alignment to get this work done efficiently and I enjoy it, right? So this is where the process of release also comes in. So there's many different approaches where people have experienced this, but they haven't paid attention to it. So another aspect that we can look at where people have experienced this is the flow state. So a flow state is a term that they use in the scientific community, in neuroscience and whatnot. So essentially, it's a process of alignment. And if you have a look at what's happening, the example I like to use is the runner's high. So someone when they're going for a marathon or whatever, they after like a few kilometers, they feel a state of release, right? And then they keep going, they feel another state of release, and then they're in this high. They're in this flow state where they're absorbed by the thing that they're doing, and their perception of their identity and their physical body starts to shift. Their perception of time starts to shift. So let's have a look at what's happening here. So what's happening is when you commit mentally, I'm going to do this marathon. You start running, right? And there's so much will the physical body has. And eventually that will give out, right? So this is where the ego will take over. So the ego goes, no, we keep going. We're not stopping. So it produces more energy and the physical body surrenders to the ego, right? Because it's exhausted its will. And then eventually the ego will also run out of will, right? It's like, I can't keep going. This is boring or whatever it comes up with. And then the ego will surrender to the mind. The mind is like, no, we keep going, right? And now you're entering into a deep state or flow state, right? It's a process of surrender. Surrender is nothing but release, right? Nothing but the alchemic substance. You're transforming states. And the spiritual process becomes where now the mind itself lets go, right? It goes and then it pays attention to the vacuity. The vacuity meaning the vacuum, the deep surrender. From there, you're able to experience the light of the mind or the spiritual nature, right? So that is a practical aspect on how you use alchemical substance, release, relaxation, whatever you want to call it, as a feeling, not a concept. And you use it for spiritual ascension, where now you get a bird's eye view of what's going on. And then like, okay, now I bring it down into a certain objective for athletic performance, business, relationships, whatever it may be. It's all based on synchronicity. And this is where the alchemical substance release helps you to align you to certain goals. So what I recommend for people when you practice this is once you got the feeling like, I can transform energy from one state to another. So when you start to transform energy from one state to another, what's happening is there's a release of time, right? When you first go from the electromagnetic physical energy, and then you start to release it into an astral state, your perception of time changes, right? So people have experienced this. So like when you say, for example, when you're having an intense conversation or when you're watching a movie that you're really enjoying, your perception of time changes, right? But you're not paying attention to it. But your perception of time changes. So it's the same thing, but we're doing it consciously. And then you're able to experience the energetic state that you're in, the consciousness is paying attention to, where the energy is very thick, dense, and slow, right? And then from there, you transform it again, where you start feathering it off, the release of space. Your experience of space changes, your perception of space changes. Now you're going into like, I'm like, oh, I can feel this much, I can feel this much, and you start to expand your consciousness, right? So once you got to that point, then you come to an understanding that our experience in the physical is bound by gravity. So it's gravity that holds consciousness in our physical body that makes us be aware of here and now. So when you're physically conscious, you're only in the present moment, because that's all the physical body wants to think about, survival, here and now. When you go into that astral state, now you think projecting back in the past and then projecting into the future, and you're looking for patterns and you're looking like, oh, for aspirations, where do I want to be? There's a release of time, right? So it's essentially our relationship to gravity, but that's the metaphysical aspect of what's happening. But in terms of practicality, you just look at, oh, what do I need to get done now? You release into it.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, that's great. This is great. Yeah. So I want to try to capture a few nuggets here, because there is about 1,500 of them in there. Just whoever's watching, just rewind that and just start over. But I want to point to a few things one of the things that you said was once the consciousness is basically, you said you're expanding consciousness when you're releasing through time and through space, that your consciousness is expanding. I feel like it's almost like it's merging into itself. Like if we take the consciousness as like the wholeness, and then take myself as an individual that has consciousness, that is part of this bigger consciousness, it's like my barriers, my walls are folding, and I'm just merging with the consciousness almost, versus like expanding, which I am, but in some sense, like I felt that there's this merging aspect in it. Yeah. And so then when you talk about the awareness of the space, or awareness of, or just being aware of the space in between the hands, for instance, earlier on, and then versus paying attention of yourself relaxing and all that kind of stuff that is typically taught in the Tai Chi world, or anywhere it's like relax yourself, then, turn off your thoughts or whatever they say in yoga classes, and, don't pay attention. You're saying just pay attention to the space to begin with, right? Yeah. So pay attention to that consciousness, that expansion and contraction of the consciousness as it is, right? And then from that, if something comes in that hinders your attention or awareness, then release that. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So basically it's a product of concentration, right? So like, bring your awareness here. You get to sense the life force, the electromagnetic energy, and that life force fuels your concentration. And because you're sensing and experiencing something new and it's outside of your body, it's easy to concentrate. But when they say concentrate inward, right, you're getting thoughts like, oh, no, I have to make my mind still. You're fighting yourself, right? And there's no fuel or motivation for why am I doing this? right? But when you pay attention between your hands, like, whoa, this is another aspect of reality that I haven't experienced before. Your mind latches on. I want to know what it is, especially if you've been seeking these sort of things for a long time. It's like this is what I've been looking for because that intuitive guiding system is like, yes, now you're on track. Now you're in the door, right? Now you're able to pay attention to the metaphysical principles that are governing everything.
Mhm.
But without that, you're only paying attention inward. This is a process that will work, but it takes a very long time, right?
Mhm.
And that's why not many people get success.
Mhm.
Whereas this method, and this is the brilliant thing of what Sifu Mark did,
Mhm.
that simple thing of move your awareness outside of your body. So
Mhm.
like, because usually in these sort of spaces, they say, oh, go inward, go inward. But when
Right.
they say go inward, they're thinking go inward in the body. No,
Yeah.
go inward into the consciousness, right?
Yes. Yes.
And the
Yes.
conscious, yes, the center of consciousness is in the pineal, in the center of the brain, but
Yeah.
there's a field of consciousness as well, you know. But when you go inward, you're paying attention to all the static that's happening there, which becomes very difficult to concentrate on. There's the thoughts and feelings and memories, all these sort of things, and people
Yeah.
get frustrated, and most often they quit, right?
Yeah.
So this is why when you bring your awareness outside, it becomes
Yeah.
easy, and it becomes easy to concentrate. And when you do get distracted, it's easy to lock back on.
Yeah.
And this is where, yes, you can use release to release a thought
Yeah.
and get back into, or you release into the feeling more to produce more feeling.
Yeah. So, for like a people that perhaps start meditation as a
Hmm.
practice to go into this spaciousness or this awareness of this space outside of themselves, the consciousness, I would suppose it would be helpful for them to be obviously when they're concentrated, it's great, but to start that sitting, a lot
Hmm.
of times there is already resistance in them
Hmm.
to like I don't know if I can sit for an hour, let's say, right? Somebody says, I don't know that I can sit still for 5 minutes, right? And
Hmm.
so obviously having, like you were saying earlier, curiosity, it's like,
Hmm.
okay, it's like what happens if I do sit for, I don't know, 15 minutes
Hmm.
and I just like feel this space, pay attention to the space. And so would that be something that would be helpful for them to start with, basically?
Yeah, so and with the long duration of sits and stuff,
Mhm.
it's not necessary to be able to sit for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, whatever. 2 minutes. Start with 2 minutes. Just focus for 2 minutes. Anyone can focus for 2 minutes, right?
Mhm.
Lock on like a pit bull and focus for 2 minutes, and then start breathing into the space between your hands. It's like, got it, right? It doesn't take long. And then from there you start to enter into a state of consciousness. Once you've concentrated for a certain period of time, you build a critical mass. Now you go through from concentration to a meditative state. A
Mhm.
meditative state is a certain state of consciousness which holds, you don't need concentration anymore. It's because you're already in that state. It's the same as falling asleep. You don't try to fall asleep, you just fall asleep, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's exactly like that. You enter into a
Mm-hmm.
meditative state and then you keep going. Now you go into an absorption state, which is what they refer to as samadhi in like the Buddhist or the Vedic
Mm-hmm.
traditions, where you're absorbed into the thing that you're doing, which again, it's another aspect of flow state. It's a deeper aspect of flow state, if you want to call it that. And so when you're absorbed into it, you don't require concentration. So this is where your perception of time and space is so released and you're absorbed into the meditation object. You don't know how long you've been meditating for. It could have been 15 minutes, it could have been 3 hours, but your perception of time is different. It's like you're
Mhm.
like, oh, geez, that was like a couple of hours I've been sitting for. It felt like 15 minutes to me. You
Yeah.
know, this is when you know that like,
Mm-hmm.
I've entered into different states of consciousness. But if you're completely aware of time in the physical and you're concentrating, this is going to be very challenging, you know, because it's hard to concentrate so it's more about entering into different states of consciousness. And this is where release comes in. So release your perception of time and space here and now into different states
Mhm.
for you to like experience these things. But then before we go into all of these sort of things, one has to ask, why am I meditating? Why am I doing all of these things? Right? What is the purpose and what's my aspiration and drive to do these things? You know,
Mm-hmm.
and it's different things for different people. For some people, they want peace, and some people they want power. They want wealth, and they believe these methods can get them that, right? Essentially, what this process does is it's a process of freedom or liberation or seeking of truth. And once you get to that place, then yes, you can manifest anything or materialize anything that you want. Because if we have a look at the concept of freedom, we have different levels. So if we go from, if we look at everything is conscious, right? From this laptop to like a rock, they're all conscious, but they're limited consciousness where their freedom of choice is very limited. They can't move anywhere, right? They're locked into one place. That's like the mineral aspect, the mineral kingdom in a sense, right? And then you go into the plants and stuff. Now they have a bit more freedom. They can reproduce and they can move around, wave a little bit, you know. And then now you have the animal kingdom where okay, now they can move around, all right? They can hunt, they can do whatever, but they're stuck in a survival zone. They can't transcend past that. Now we're in a cusp as humans where we have a choice. We have a freedom of choice whether to evolve consciously because now we understand we are more advanced conscious beings. We have a choice on what we want to do. If you stay stuck in the survival aspect, you're really no different from an animal in a sense. This is where we need to transcend that aspect. How do we do this? So first, when you go through this process, you start to understand that, oh, I'm not going to just die and disappear. So fear of death goes away, right? With that, fear of illness goes away, fear of poverty goes away, because we come to an understanding this is just an experience, and from a spiritual perspective, from the spirit's perspective, it goes like that. It's like like if you have a bad day, you're like, whatever, bad day, move on, right? It's just like that. A lifetime for a spirit is just like a bad day, you know, or a good day. It doesn't really latch onto it like that. So how do we get to that place? So because our freedom of choice is locked into time and space here and now, like I can only be in one place and one time at any given moment. When you start to release that aspect, now you can move through timelines, right? So what happens when when we're dreaming, when we go fall asleep, the physical matrix starts to dissolve, and then you enter into this astral state of consciousness. Now you enter when you go to sleep, you enter into a dream state, and now you're experiencing a collage of different memories that you've had in your life simultaneously. So you would have had dreams where you're in your childhood home, but you're an adult and you've got all these other people that you know what I mean. There's a collage of things where it's not the time is different. That the time continuum is different there. So now you have freedom of time to a degree. You keep going. Now you have freedom of space, and then you go into this timeless, spaceless thing, and then now you go into non-duality, infinity quality. So that's the process of freedom. So it's essentially that. So the reason why someone would practice these things, right? They have to have a definitive reason of why am I practicing and what is my aspiration and goals, right? So that's important. General curiosity is not enough. You know, you got to have a certain aspiration and commitment to be successful. All right. It's not like a big commitment depending on the degree on how far you want to go, but most people can get up to the mental level. They don't have to work with the Akasha or light. They can get up to the mental level to have a better life, right? But if you're serious, then yeah, you go on into Akasha and light. And so that aspect has to be very clearly defined. Why am I doing this? What's my objective? So from there, it becomes easy. But if you're doing it like, I don't know what I'm doing, I'm just exploring, you're most likely going to fail, you know, because the commitment reflects on what your aspirations are. You know, if it's truth that you're seeking, if it's freedom that you're seeking, whatever it may be, there's a degree of commitment and aspiration that's required for you to be successful in anything.
Clarity of intent, right? And I will speak to we will speak to Akasha and Light a little bit later in here. I want to go back to that as well.
As you're speaking, I'm
Emerging.
remembering back to particularly I trained horses for quite a bit of time in my life, and that was probably the first time I sort of touched being completely, you know, in other words, I could be riding and I only felt, I say
Whoa.
here, but felt the horse's heartbeat, and the horse's body and what the horse's body was doing, and then what my body needs to do for what we are doing. The same way there's 10 other horses in the ring with 10 other riders, but I can only hear my trainer's voice. That's it. And it's chaos because it was pretty crazy wild horses. And so, and same thing, I was there to get my teaching certification. And so the same, I could be the instructor. I was at the point where I could look at, one horse and rider and just tune into them. I'm still aware of what's happening because, I need to all of it. And so that feels familiar. And so now I'm, over the past many years, given permission to myself to go further in it because it requires being in this state, which feels very normal, comfortable, familiar. It feels like what I'm here to be. And I wonder do you ever encounter with students or in workshops where people saying, I'm loving this, but it's affecting my relationships. In other words, they're in the environment of people who are like, not understanding of it. And then to give yourself permission and sort of keep moving forward. Is that something you encounter ever?
Yeah, so with the spiritual practices, there are a lot of positive things, if you want to label it that, and a lot of
Sure.
negative things that kind of come along with it. And one of them is it's the principle of resonance. So you attract people into your life that are in resonance with your path. And when you shift your path, a lot of people start to fall off. And this is a sad reality, but like if they don't come on board or you don't come on board with what they want to do, then eventually you're going to drift away. It's a natural thing that happens, and we've all experienced that. And the reason for that is it's basically resonance. So when you felt the horse and the heartbeat, there's a resonance where your consciousness and the consciousness of the horse starts to merge a little bit. Right? And this is what we refer to as mental transference or consciousness, transferring your consciousness into something. This could be animals, objects, and whatnot. And that synchronicity happened because of resonance. You're both like, physically, rhythmically moving together. You're feeling the horse, you're feeling the space, and like you become one with the horse in a sense. So this is in the scientific thing, they would call it entanglement, but I don't like the word entangled. I don't want to be entangled with anything.
Yeah.
I want to be in resonance with something.
I agree. Yeah.
So essentially,
Yeah.
this happens from friends, family, even partners. If they're not in resonance with what you're doing, and especially if there's a contradiction, eventually those relationships won't work. Eventually they'll drift away, and that is like a reality that we have to face. And just depends on what you choose. Is it your truth or the relationship? That's I would say a negative aspect. It depends how you look at it, but and the other aspect is when you go deeper into the spiritual process, especially when you're working with Akasha, your sense of self starts to disappear, right? And you start to, well, because the way you get into this vacuity quality of emptiness is through surrender. You have to let go of whatever the consciousness is stuck to inform, which is will. So there's a physical will, there's the ego will, and there's a mental will. You surrender all of these things, and then now you're able to stabilize and ground yourself in this vacuity quality. When you do that, you slowly start to remove any resistance towards your spiritual path, and your identity starts getting dissolved a little bit, and it starts to retune itself. And people who stop there, they feel this emptiness. When they stop meditating and they accumulate this practice, they feel like, what's the point of anything? Right? And there's this kind of depression and that sort of feeling that starts to accumulate. But this is only a period of time that happens. And what you need to do is, if that happens, then you have to work more with the light than the emptiness, more with the non-dual light than the emptiness. Because you start to produce what's called an Akashic will, I don't know if we're ready to talk about Akasha yet, but I just put it in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Keep going, and we'll have to back up
Yeah.
a little bit, but keep going
Okay,
to
okay.
get your point
Yeah.
across. Yeah.
So the Akashic will, which is basically anti-will.
Yeah.
So it's a reverse will in a sense. We have will
Okay.
from like yeah, it's a hard thing to comprehend, but when you're in that state, you can comprehend it. So when you're in that infinity quality of emptiness, you need a completely different type of will, which is basically what we refer to as surrender, which is an anti-reverse will. And you have
Mm-hmm.
to stabilize your mind in that thing, which can be a bit more challenging, you know, and that's where you could experience some downsides. It's costing you life force to pay attention to emptiness
Mm-hmm.
because you have to give up form to pay attention to formlessness. So it's
Yes.
taking away from form. So you will feel if you're not a vital person, if you're not a healthy person, this can be dangerous. So you have
Mm-hmm.
to look at like, oh, I need to fix my vitality, my health, if I want to do that sort of practices.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
those are the only two downsides I would say in terms of spiritual practices or metaphysical
Mm-hmm.
practices. Other than that, it's all pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Mm-hmm.
Cool. So yeah, I want to go to the Akashic space as well. I'm just to Akasha and the definition, all that stuff, because I know that for some of you it already makes sense what Dinesh is saying because of you understand the term. But for some of you who don't necessarily understand the term yet, so don't worry, we'll get through that as well in a bit. I did want to back up a little bit and go into the physicality a little bit more
Mhm,
before we jump into the Akashics and the non-dual light as well. So one of the things that I was going to ask you about is the function of fascia, and I
mhm,
know you're really eloquent about describing exactly how this whole thing works. I loved your video on when you were saying the fascia is kind of like the conductor, and then we have the muscles and the
mhm,
joints, the bones, and then it's the the resistor, the capacitor, the inductor, and just the comparison in that. And so for those out there who don't necessarily understand what fascia is basically connective tissue that touches everything inside of the body that's in between, that fills up the in between space, let's say. So it's like the connective web that is when it's elastic, because I believe that you were also saying it's like built of elastin and collagen, obviously, I think. And then so it's an elastic tissue. And so when it's moist and then stretchy, it functions really well. And so how does that affect when the fascia isn't elastic and stretchy? How does it affect our body? And
Mm-hmm.
then again, what's actual fascia's role that you know of?
So as you mentioned, it's a connective tissue. It's basically a network system, and it connects everything to everything else, right? That's one role on a physical level of what it's doing. But from a practical level, it's like for example, like okay, there's a few different things we have to cover here. So one is it's predominantly made of water. It's like 90% water. So water is a very strong conductor for energy, right? So this is why, like when you feel energy, you're feeling it through the fascial web. So now you can, because you have conscious awareness of energy and you're able to direct energy according to your will, now you can move that energy through the body and feel the different aspects of your body you haven't felt before, right? So for example, they say you can't feel your brain, right? Your brain has no pain receptors, whatever. But if you have awareness of energy, then you move that energy towards your head, you can feel the different components of your brain, right? And this is something you have to practice, and then you feel. But just a disclaimer here: don't breathe energy into your brain. It'll give you a headache. Uh,
What would that look like?
what would look like?
If you were to breathe energy into your brain, what would you be actually doing? Like you
Okay,
basically create an energy field and then you feel the breathing it in.
yeah, just like when you do pore breathing, you can feel the saturation. It's like it
Uh-huh.
going through like a filtering system, and then
Mhm.
it gets absorbed and it conducts through the fascial
Okay.
web. So the energy will reflect where you have tensions, where you are not conducting energy, and there's muscle contraction. right? And because you can feel that where energy is flowing, there's conductivity. When energy is not flowing, there is no conductivity, there's resistance, which is the muscles contracting. This is
Gotcha.
where you're able to consciously release through energetic awareness of different aspects of your body, which you weren't able to do before. So, on a practical level, this is a much easier way on how to release your body to a more conductive and elastic state, right? So that's one aspect. The other aspect is how much energy can you conduct through the body? This requires the elasticity as well as the density of the fascial tissue. So the more density and elastic you are, the more energy you can pass through your body. When I say energy, there's different aspects of energy. So there's physical mass, there's kinetic energy. So like how much kinetic energy can you produce from the body is based on the conductivity of it, right? So this is where when you look at athletes, especially like gymnasts who are very elastic, they can produce a lot of force because they're so elastic. But a bodybuilder can't produce as much anywhere near as much force as say a powerlifter or a gymnast because they're creating lumps of tension because they're not concerned about being the strongest, they're concerned about looking a certain way, which is a different goal. But if you're looking for strength and the ability to produce force, it's the conductivity that you have. The more conductive you are, the more force you can generate. Where the resistance comes in is when your body can't withstand a certain amount of force, the muscles will contract to protect the system. That's the resistance, right? So the more resistance you have, the more muscle tension you have, right?
Okay.
So when you release the muscle tension and you transform it into a fascial tension, now the energy passes through because it's predominantly water and elastic. Yeah, just like a resistant band, if there's knots in the resistant band, it's going to stop, right? Which is the muscle tension. But when you release that, then the energy goes through the spring or the resistance band. So it's the same thing. So what we want to do is we want to make the physical body a superconductor where it can conduct life force and energy at a very efficient and high level. And now you're able to create a field of energy around you, which has, depending on what you want, you can have different information into it. And then you go into a certain space, you become the alpha tuning fork, right? You hold, and certain people have this already, right? And the body is not the only conductor for energy. You also have the mind. You also have the astral body. So you'll notice some people that when they step into a room, they've got presence, and other people they hide away, you know. And I mean, there are other aspects to this, but in terms of the physical body, it's how much energy can someone conduct through their body. Athletes, no doubt, they can conduct a lot of energy. That's why as soon as they walk into a room, they take up the room, you know. So, like in terms of say, like for example, in the internal arts they talk about don't do weights and this and that. That's not true. You look at like athletes, if they learn the metaphysical things, they'll be way better than most Tai Chi practitioners out there,
Yeah.
which is a controversial thing to say because all they're focused on is release, release, release.
Yeah.
But it's what are they releasing? There's not much to release there. So they become very jelly and soft. And yes, they're able to sense energy a lot more. They're able to listen, but it comes at a cost. But if, say, a power lifter learns the internal methods, they're going to be able to produce a lot of energy.
Yeah,
It's
I
just,
like that you're speaking
yeah.
to this because like I've noticed that, and I don't know if you noticed it with some of the students. I think you have a little bit more advanced students than I. I start with people who are like starting from scratch oftentimes, and I feel that sometimes people when people don't have so much energy, they're not their fascial tissue obviously isn't as conductive. Is I think you or maybe Sifu Mark has described it like a thin wire versus a thick wire. I think you described it that way.
Mhm.
And so if you have not practiced enough, basically, if your fascial tissue isn't flexible enough, elastic enough, because you have sedentary life or something, and I start to show you how the energy works, and you start to really actually get the energy feel, it
Mhm.
may feel like you're fainting or like you're burning this thin wire because it's too much energy passing through a physical body that's unprepared kind of thing for this much of energy. Is this something that you meet with?
Yeah, so when you start to load your body with energy, and if you there's only a certain amount of energy the body can hold. When you
Hmm.
have more than that, this is where you look at like methods like they stored energy into the dantian. This can create overheating. where it's,
Mm.
yes, you have power, but it comes at a cost. It's a risk to health because energy wants to express itself. It doesn't want to stay there. So when you load yourself with the energy and when you lose mindfulness, it's going to leak energy through your gaps, meaning it's
Mm.
the physical aspects, the emotional aspects. You might have like anger outbursts and stuff like that. So this is where you use the energy and then you let it go. You just don't keep it in your system because there's only a certain amount of energy that your body is adapted to. You can increase that over time, but if you do too much loading of the energy without the actual training of the physical body of being able to conduct a certain amount, then you can have problems.
Right.
Yeah, it's like, having a thin cable and you and then you're putting a lot of power into it, it's going to burn out. So
Yeah.
yeah, the cable has to match the amount of the volt that you're putting through.
Right. Right. Right.
Fascia stuff is a huge topic.
Yes.
Uh,
Yeah.
it's pretty massive, and like it's only been I think the last 20 or 30 years that they've started to look into this. Before that, they looked at it as, oh, this is just wrapping material around our organs and whatnot. But they're like, oh, this has an important function,
Mhm.
and they're
Yeah.
starting to realize, oh, it's actually a sensory organ.
Yeah.
And I think they've made it like the largest organ in the human body because the fascia is everywhere, you
Yeah.
know.
Mhm.
So there's that aspect where before you couldn't feel different aspects of yourself. For example, you can't feel your internal organs unless they're in pain, right? Uh, but now through fascia and energy conduction, you can feel different aspects of your organ. And now it makes sense with like the Tao systems of how they do healing systems of like how to heal different parts of your organ by just placing your hand over it, bringing your awareness and bringing the
Mhm.
energy and information to heal different parts of your body. Now it makes sense because you're able to, the consciousness pays attention to energy, the energy carries your awareness to different aspects of your body, right? Now you're able to change the information according to that because you can feel it. You can only influence what you can feel. If you can't feel it, you can't influence it. You have to have some sort of relationship with it. So on a practical level, this is, for healing, it's brilliant, right? For athletic performance, it's brilliant. For meditation, it's also super significant because to be able to release the body has to be conductive of energy. Otherwise, gravity will pull your consciousness back into the body, into the tensions of the body, and now you can't release it into different states of consciousness. So, fascia is a huge aspect that we need to look into. And the easiest way to develop it, if you're not like an athletic type, is trampoline. Just jump up and down on the trampoline. You'll start to pay attention how your mind also moves up and down, how
Mhm.
the energy is moving through the body, the mass is going up and down, and then from there, you all you need is a little pulse, and you shoot up. You don't have to squat down and jump up. It's just bang, and then you shoot up because you understand how energy and mass moves through as you create the pulse.
Mhm.
And then you put that into your Fascia, and you put that into anything that you want. So it's a pretty big thing that we need to explore a bit more.
Yeah, for sure. I think there has been a lot
Mhm.
of research done around fascia. Is there something that's captivated you about this, Tammy?
So if a person comes and they want to do this work,
Hmm.
and if there are, particularly with the spine, if there
Hmm.
are conditions or the discs ruptured, herniated, anything, the first part is, does that hinder, like, is there something more that you do with someone, because that's going to be a block to
Hmm.
energy, right? And then the other part of it is, which I've had experience with, of healing, like you spoke to.
Hmm.
So healing things through energy, and I've been blessed with a lot of experiences personally with that.
Hmm.
But yeah, I'm curious about,
Yeah.
working with someone that does have things
Mhm.
that are
Yeah.
blocks.
So on one end, it becomes tricky when you have health problems because when you expand your mind outside of your body, you're dissipating energy in a sense.
Hmm.
So you're reducing life force. It comes at a cost with you reducing life force when you expand your mind
Yeah.
until you're able to absorb life force, right?
Yes.
So initial stages, like, oh yeah, I need to use energy to pay attention to a larger space. And then after a while, you're able to invite energy from the nature, and then that will provide life force for your body. And then from there, if you have the ability to change information, right? So if you have a spinal problem like a bulging disc or a ruptured disc or whatever it may be, then you look at, okay, what's the information contained there? So there's an astral feeling of it, right? Your relationship to that injury. There's the injury itself, and then there's the consciousness around the injury. So when you're able to separate these three aspects, now healing becomes a lot easier. But when they're all combined together, now healing becomes very difficult. And this is where they have to go through surgical procedures and blah, blah, blah. And hopefully that works. You always want to do that because it's proven. And if for most cases, it works. But you can use the metaphysical components to enhance that process, right? First, change your relationship to whatever injury you have, especially if it's a chronic thing. Your consciousness has touched that, and you start to build an identity around that, and then that makes it worse, right? Because there's an attachment to that. There's a protectiveness around that. So first, change that relationship, and the way you do that is by what we talked about, creating a separation. And then from there, because you've created a separation, now you're able to change the information that's there. Essentially, all there is consciousness, energy, and information. You separate these three aspects, and if you have the ability to change the energy and the information, then it will change, right? And this is where miraculous healing, we talk about, we witness miraculous healing, whether in our own lives or you've seen heaps of cases where that person should have died or whatever. How does that happen? We want to look at things from like when I say science, I'm talking more metaphysical, like what's the causation chain, how that can happen, right? So this is where faith comes in, right? Faith and belief. So this is a double-edged sword. So when you have faith or belief, it's a double-edged sword. And if you use it as a powerful tool, then it's completely safe. But if you completely give into it, this is where it can change your identity into certain things where, religious dogma and blah, 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 all that sort of stuff happens. But when you have a complete faith in the process and your ability, then things happen.
Yes.
Right? So because faith is a very strong conductor for energy. And it's a substance on its own. Every word is a substance. Every idea, there's a substance to it. When I say substance, there's an energetic aspect to it. And then faith is super strong. So the stronger your faith or the stronger the belief in your ability, then the more likely you're going to get the results that you want. So this is where you have to use it in a way where when you're applying a process, you do it with complete faith. But when you're analyzing the process, this is where faith has nothing to do with it. You're looking at the science behind how can this actually happen, and so use it as a tool. It's not something like where, from a religious perspective, where there's intellect is completely removed from, there's no reason. They're just like, oh, I just believe in it because that's how it is. That's not what I'm talking about. It's more faith in your ability. So if you have those sort of capabilities, then yes, you can heal it. But when it comes to healing, other people can heal your stuff a lot easier than you can heal it because of the relationship and the identity that you have. And this is where the healer should have a certain amount of faith in their ability. So when you engage with the healer, you can feel, oh, this person knows what he's doing. There's a feeling to it, and then you want to open up and let them heal you, right? So, but going back to what you were saying, is this a hindrance for people to develop themselves? In some ways, yes. In other ways, no. Because body's not the only conductor of energy. The mind itself is a conductor of energy, right? So if you have limitations of the mind, limitations of the body, then you're going to work more mentally and astrally, right? And you develop yourself there. And then when you're able to, and if you have the karmic aspect where you're able to heal the body in this incarnation, then that will happen, right? But if it's something that you have to go through, then you have to go through it. And remember, we're just here to learn. So it's not about looking like, oh, I want the ideal situation. It's what are you here to do?
Wow.
Right. Like if you consider people like Stephen Hawkins, he has his life physically was a disaster, but his ability to become a genius even through like the physicality, the debilitation really of his body in some sense. And his mind was absolutely brilliant, and what he's achieved in this world, the research that he's done around human mind and psyche, it was amazing, you know.
Mm.
So again, like you speak about karma, right? So if it wasn't like for him to heal physical body is like, okay, well, that wasn't his karma in sense, you know.
Mm.
It was to, can I would guess it would be more in line of like for him to, can I become amazing even in this body, you know, which he did,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
just like, oh my God, wow. So thank you
Mhm.
for speaking to that as well. And then Tammy posing the question. Thank
Mhm.
you. Because there's a huge aspect, of course, this whole thing we're doing this because oftentimes the healing can be assisted. Like you were just saying, that sometimes it's like a blind spot for us that we don't see the things that are going on within ourselves and somebody else does. And so that someone else that we trust can bring in that healing or just can like open this portal to where we connect to heal again. Because in some sense, I feel the body is just healing all the time. It's trying to.
Yeah.
It's just like there's crap in the way. And the
Mhm.
crap is like the thoughts, your beliefs, your limiting ideas about yourself or about the world around you, and the traumas that we've gone through, when you were, especially when we were kids and stuff. Those are the blind spots I feel. And then because of those things, there's like a wall that's been built around our little beautiful soul that's just kind of insensitive, pure. But because of this stuff, we can't actually fully comprehend the nature of life, the consciousness,
Yeah.
etc. Right? Because it's just like
Mhm.
there's stuff around it, And so more we release that stuff, speaking back to the release ability, and the more we understand how the physical body works, as in the fascial tissue conducts the energy. And I believe in one of your videos, you were saying that the fascia conducts energy 5 times faster than the nerves do, or something like that.
Yeah, I looked that up, and someone asked me about like a reference
Yeah.
to that. I can't remember where I found it. It was ages ago, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's because it's predominantly made of water.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
water's very conductive.
Yeah.
So,
Mhm.
and it's a sensory organ. Like these are all
Yeah.
new things that they've discovered, and these are like all this intellectual information. The
Yeah.
reason why I put it out there is one, it's fascinating to know. Two, like my job as a teacher is to release resistance for people to understand their true nature. That's
Yes.
that's that's my job. That's all it is.
Mhm.
Hmm.
And so the different resistance
Mhm.
people have is ideas. Like they're like, oh, if they have a scientific mind, they'll be like, oh, but the body's designed this way. The scientific research paper has done this. It said this like 20 years ago, but now it's saying this. Now it's saying that. They're constantly changing, which is completely fine. So people have different types of resistance. So when I give information, is to remove that resistance. So if there's intellectual aspect where they're like, oh, there's a synchronicity between the intellectual aspect and the spiritual aspect, they're like, oh, cool, now they're on board. Right.
Hmm.
So that's why I use these things to help people that understand this makes intellectual and logical sense as well as intuitive sense, you know.
Yes.
But like I said before, the less information you have, the easier the process becomes. The
Yeah.
more information you have, the more resistance you have to overcome.
Mhm.
So you know how you said about like the body's ability to heal, that like if you look at like now they've got a lot of science in terms of fasting. So stop eating,
Yeah.
right? Your body goes into autophagy and it's a cellular repair and it just starts to heal itself. This happens in all levels, right?
Yeah.
Stop
Mhm.
getting in the way. You heal from an emotional level, from your astral body. Stop thinking about old memories and past emotional patterns. Just be quiet. Be
Yeah.
quiet in your mind. Now you create this. This is what the Zhongding, if I pronounce it properly, or the equilibrium
Yeah.
starts to happen. And the alchemical substance is happening by itself. You
Uh-huh.
just pay attention to that release quality, stop getting in the way. Now you're
Mhm.
able to understand the true nature. This is one of the easiest way on how to do this, right?
Right.
Yeah.
It's easy to
Excellent.
do.
Yeah.
And this is another idea that's been passed along from different traditions.
Uh-huh.
This takes rigorous work. This is very hard. You have to stand like this for 10 years or you have to meditate for like decades. No, It's not. There's a mechanical process, and you know, there's a precision in what your mind has to do, what the body has to do, and what the energy has to do. When you get that, bang, you're in. It's the same as when you do building the ball. If you just hold your hands here and wait for something to happen, nothing's going to happen. And maybe some people who are empaths can start feeling energy. But if there's a precision, like, oh, bring your awareness here, now stretch open your joints and maintain concentration, everyone gets it instantly. So it doesn't accumulate over a period of time. If everything's synchronized, you get it straight away, right?
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
the principle right there we want to get to. And it's the same process on how you achieve goals, same process on how you achieve, go towards non-dual light.
Yeah, beautiful. This is amazing. I'm getting even, I've already heard a lot of this stuff, but I'm getting all sorts of another just layers of like understanding here. So this is awesome. I think that this is a great segue to jump into Akashic space and non-dual light definitions, and maybe go a little bit into elements as well. Thank you again so much for joining us. This was a fantastic chat with Dinesh and Tammy. And this interview was so fantastic that we went way over time with our podcast episode. And so we're splitting this into 2 parts, and the part 2 is coming up. And if you, like myself, enjoyed a lot of this conversation or some of this conversation, give us a like, subscribe, hit the bell button so you don't miss out any other future podcast sessions that we will do. And stay tuned to your beautiful soul. And we'll see you next time.